In Learning ZIG, Session 6 will cover defer and errdefer for and while loops, along with insight to mutability of function parameters. Let's start with a new sample ZIG file to test it. Defer is well known to Go language folks. This keyword placed before any expression marks it to be executed on exit of current scope. In our sample code, we'll just using defer to print a statement to showcase order of execution. It aids with code maintenance and readability for things like deallocation. Such expressions can be written as a next expression to allocation, ensuring its execution no matter which internal flow the evaluation takes. We see the output has deferred print at the end, as it was stacked away. Now defer's scope is for current block, which may not be the entire function. A scope with multiple defer expressions gets stacked. So in this for loop we wrote, at end of every iteration that iteration's scope ends, thus execution defer for it there itself. Let's fix this ZIG array declaration. I'll make the length inferred and move signature to RHS. Also, identifier used to fetch items from array is getting shadowed, so let's rename it to something classic like I. Now running it shows order of the items is maintained due to the scope defer belongs to. Let's pretty up the print output and rerun for a clean look. To showcase the flow is as intended, let's also print a simple bleh with value, to note which order it is among different iterations. Oh, I forgot to add the element value to the non-deferred print statement. The ZIG run output shows the code intent matches with result. Once again, to showcase meaning of scope for defer, let's move this defer at top into a separate pair of curly braces. In output, it moves on top as the execution happens with end of its first parent scope, now not the function. ZIG also have errdefer keyword which acts similar to defer, except for it being a conditional run that is occurrence of error in current scope. That makes it a suitable way to do error handling in ZIG. Defer and errdefer collectively get stacked and executed with last in first out order. To showcase it, let's add a new function oddr. It will throw an error if the parameter to it odd. Fancy, I know. So we'll pass an integer to foo as well. That gets past oddr here at the end. It's try oddr as the return type is void or error. And we'll make two calls to foo, one with an even and another with odd parameter. We place an errdefer print statement that shall only print once for the odd error flow. Now when we run, it fails in the second call and triggers errdefer. If we switch the order, we can ensure that the errdefer triggers, but since we have not managed the erroneous state to bubble up, the parent scope panics as well. Just giving a quick switch to defer and errdefer statement to see last in first out in action as well. Now let's take a look at ZIGs for loop iterating over elements of a slice or an array. The collection object is written inside parentheses followed with a pair of pipes with identifier declared for item iterated over. We can also pass range within parentheses or arrays with range selector to iterate over a portion of it. If string object is provided in parentheses, the iterated over items are the characters of it in sequence. If the index of item is required during iteration, a range delector can be passed along with list in parentheses, giving item and index as two identifiers between pipe notations. Let's add index to our code sample as idx zig run and check the output. To skip the item altogether and use only index, can use underscore for identifier to be not used. If we just provide a range selector with begin index, it will be erroneous for being unbound to an upper range. We can give it a bound using r.length. Let's rewind latest change. And for while loops, a traditional expression with conditional loop switch in parentheses. Thereon can be optionally followed by a colon and parentheses with expression that might update the identifier involved in loop's condition. Also, we have standard loop flow altering keywords break and continue. Based on conditional logic break would exit the loop there itself and continue keyword would skip to next iteration. As here, while true is a continuing flow which only exits the loop when if condition is satisfied and reaches break statement. And in the next example for to's multiple indexes, loop flow will skip the inner statements after continue. Let's do a quick code run for while loop. For each array item, let's divide down the number by 10 until it's above 0. A simple divide would cause error. In ZIG, two signed integers require built-in functions like divFloor, divTrunk, or divExact. And since item is of constant type, we'll need to play around with a variable. Let's pretty up the print statements a bit and rerun. Let's also add conditional break and continue as well. If I is 10, then break, else if I is 100 then set I to 0 and continue, which overall makes it exit on continue due to while's condition. In ZIG, function parameters are immutable. Changing the past parameter's value would raise error. ZIG's parameter are passed by value as default for primitive types. For complex data types, ZIG passes by value or reference deciding on free optimization. This can be managed for parameters' constant nature. In some scenarios, a function would need to update the data bind to a parameters itself. In such cases, pointers could be passed instead. Then the value could be accessed and tweaked by dereferencing the pointer. As in the example here, a U32 integer pointer gets passed as x, then x.* allow you to use the value and assign a new to x. Now let's add sample code, first to see error for immutable function parameters. Now let's tweak parameter pass to foo be a pointer to integer. So we'll have to pass it to errdefer using dereferencing. We'll also change the value later to confirm mutability. Let's also add some to prints to ensure the value gets changed between dual calls of foo if we pass same variable to it twice. Running it shows the correct addition values and errdefer result. This is it for this session.